It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
This is Revolution Radio. Studio B. Are you ready? Hunting spirits and stories both current and from days gone by. It's the Spectre Detective. With Christine Hart.
Hi, welcome to Spectre Detectives. It's Christine Joanna Hart. Welcome to the show. I've got really two really interesting guests for you today. I've got Joseph Jordan and his co-author on a new book. As all of you know, Joseph Jordan is a UFO expert. He's with SETI. He's been on my program before, and I'm going to bring him on straight away. Sorry, I can't speak. His co-author is Jason December. I'm going to bring him on too. Let's see if I can bring him on first. This pause. It's all technology, isn't it? One day they'll make it all a lot faster than this. It's odd, so I can't bring on more than one person at the same time. Jason, are you with me? Okay. Wonder if someone could give me a shout. Let me know if I'm coming on loud and clear on air, please. So I tried to bring on my guess, but it wouldn't work. That's so odd. I'm going to try for Joseph Jordan. Pausing. Joseph, are you with me? Oh, is that Jason? Hi, Jason.
Hi.
Hello. I don't know if Joseph is with us yet.
Okay. You should be joining us in a second.
I know. Do you want to kill your audio? Because I'm a visuals. Can you kill your visuals?
Kill my visual? Yeah,
Yeah.
my wife's helping me, so I'm going to have her do this.
Okay.
This is all, I'm not very tech, bear with me.
Oh, don't worry, just cross the cat. I think Joseph is with us now.
Okay.
Joseph?
He's.
Yeah, hang on. Are you there?
Oh, there he is. Yeah. Okay, we can do visuals with both of you. That's fine. Just stay. I think it's okay. Sometimes it interferes with the audio, but I think it'll be fine. So, Joseph, whereabouts are you now? Are you in Hong Kong?
Korea, South Korea.
Oh, Korea. What are you actually doing there?
I'm a contractor for the U.S. military, helping them out. U.S. contractor.
Oh, excellent. And I was just telling the audience, you know, you work for, is it SETI?
I work for MUFON.
Oh, yes, MUFON. Sorry. And you've done that for many years, haven't you? Sorry, am I coming in loudly?
Yes, you're coming in good. Am I all right?
Yeah, you're fine. I'm just wondering if you can hear me okay. And so, and your new book, can you read the title out and for the listeners?
Yeah, Piercing the Cosmic Veil.
Piercing the
Cosmic Veil.
Excellent. And your co-author is Jason, there beside you, Jason
Right.
December. So he's going to join me in the second hour. He's just going to listen in this hour. So do you want to explain to the audience what your book is about, Joseph? Because most people know you. You're very famous. Certainly, you know, people around the UFO community know you and your work. So what is this new book? What is it all about?
This new book is finally a culmination of everything that we've done with CE4 research over 25 years. We've finally been able to put it all together in one book that you can put in your hand, you can read, and you can share with other people. I've waited 25 years to finally get to the end of the story, you know, all the information put together to where I can put it in one compilation to be able to say, hey, this is what we're dealing with. This is how we can help people.
Excellent. And can you explain to the audience, you know, how you started off working in this field for those that don't know?
Well, when I first got into this, it was kind of by accident. I started out on a vacation trip to Alaska, and I was looking for a book to read because it was going to be a 10-hour flight to Anchorage to visit family. And I started looking through the kiosk at the airport for a magazine or a couple magazines or maybe a paperback to pass the time on the airplane. And I'm browsing through the books, and I happened to come across one that looked like a science fiction book. I used to love science fiction when I was younger. So I picked it up, I looked it over, and turned around to the backside of it to see what the synopsis was of the book. And it read like it was science, not science fiction, but everything about the title and everything about the way it looks, that it was science fiction. So I was kind of puzzled by that because I knew that there was a fine line, but a definite line between reality and fiction. To me, when I used to read science fiction, it was a form of escape. You know, people read mystery books, they read, you know, all different types of books. And it's usually for a time to escape from their, you know, daily routine, daily reality. And that's the way I was with science fiction. But this fine line was being blurred on this particular book. So I had to pick it up. I had to take a look at it and see what it was about. And that book was UFO Crash at Roswell. And I grabbed the book. I read it very quickly. I had to get to the end of it to see what they were talking about. And all that book did was open up the rabbit hole for me to look for more answers on what this phenomenon was about. Prior to reading that book, I had no background in looking at UFOs and aliens and all that stuff. Like I said, to me, that was fantasy. I had no belief that there was anything out there like that or anything coming here to Earth. But as I got into the research and started looking more and more into it, I was eventually connected to the Mutual UFO Network, and which is the largest grassroots organization in the world for UFO investigations. I was trained up to be a field investigator. Eventually, I took over as a state section director where I was living in Florida at Brevard County, which is the county where the Kennedy Space Center is located. Great place to be involved.
Hang on one second. There's a cat. Who's got that kitty cat?
I do, and I can't make him be quiet.
Okay, all right. I'll let you off. So you became a field investigator, and what job were you doing during the day at this point?
At that time, when I first started out, I was finishing up a 24-year career at one of the biggest boat companies in the world. And I was in the safety program there as a safety specialist. I eventually, in 2008, as the economy took a dive, I ended up changing jobs and had the opportunity to work at the Kennedy Space Center as a safety professional for a few years. And then eventually, as the space shuttle program died down, I started looking for other opportunity for employment, and then opted for an opportunity for somebody else to pay my way to see the world. And I became a contractor supporting the military overseas as a safety specialist, which, I'm doing now.
Oh, right. Excellent. And so what happened when you started? You had sort of an interesting time, didn't you, when you started meeting experiences when you were working as a field investigator?
Yeah, I did, because one of the requirements as a MUFON state section director, once I got to that status, was I needed to hold a monthly meeting free to the public, to help educate the public on the subject matter of UFOs, and also to help drum up membership, I should say, for MUFON. So when I first found a place to do that at a local public library, which they didn't charge me, and they gave me all my audio, visual equipment for free to use, I hung a sign on a door, and it said, UFO meeting open to the public free of charge. I tell you what, if you ever do that, put a sign on a room that says, UFO meeting, you're going to be amazed at the type of people that walk into that place. And I had no idea what I was getting into, really. And there were people from all branches of life, all different professions, and I tell you, the stories that started coming out were fascinating. People who were having extremely bizarre experiences, some of them just, almost unbelievable. But my job was to record these experiences, record their reports, as a MUFON investigator, and get them, into the database that they've been working on since 1969. And that database is to try to find out what else, what are the commonalities between sightings or experiences that they can look at to, try to find answers to this phenomenon. But keep in mind, when I first got into this phenomenon, I was what you call an agnostic humanist. I didn't believe in God. I didn't, pretty much believe in anything except a hard day's work and a good beer after work, and that was pretty much my lifetime. But as I got into this and started listening to these people's stories, I saw that there was a connection there that I wasn't expecting. And it seemed to be a spiritual connection. A lot of these people that I was listening to that were having these experiences that were coming to my meeting were also involved in different aspects of what you would call New Age metaphysics. And I guess what they were looking for in that realm was answers to why they were having these experiences. I think that's the purpose of it. I felt that that's what the purpose was. But at the same time, MUFON was warning me about not being involved with that type of subject matter. The reason being that we couldn't scientifically investigate metaphysical things and, things of the New Age. But as I looked at that, I said, as an honest, open investigator, I can't just say I'm not going to look at this part of the information. I've got to look at the whole picture. So I did. And as I did, I myself became involved in that type of education and teaching and learning. I myself spent the next 4 years as a UFO investigator, but also deep involved in the New Age, the occult, the metaphysical realm, trying to find the connection between it and the UFO phenomenon. And so I had a chance to view this phenomenon, this UFO phenomenon, from two distinct perspectives. And a lot of people don't get that chance. A lot of people keep one perspective in life, one viewpoint that they have, and that's how they look at this phenomenon. But I had an opportunity to look at it from an agnostic humanist and, again, as a New Age practitioner. But then in 1996, as we started getting deeper and deeper into the research, I had one of my fellow researchers, actually it was a girl that was working with us that I was dating. She said, you guys are into some really dark stuff here with these experiences. And she says, I think you need some protection over this yourself and in this work you're doing. And I pulled out my gemstones that I used to carry around. I said, I got all the protection I need. And she says, no. She says, I mean real protection. And I asked her, what are you talking about? And she showed me a Bible. And I said, oh, no. That's got nothing to do with this phenomenon. I said, we agreed not to talk about that because she was a professing Christian and I was a professing crystal rolling New Ager at the time. And we agreed to keep our beliefs, separate from each other, just do the research together. And then she called me out. She says, you always tell people you're the most open-minded, objective researcher there is. I want you to take that and look at this, what I got to show you, just for a few minutes. And, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I did. And she opened up that Bible, took to some verses, and I tell you, I'd never heard scripture given to me like that ever in my life. And when she was done, I said, you know what? I want that protection. That's real protection. And I became a Christian at that point in my life. And there again, now I've got an opportunity to look at this phenomenon from a third distinct perspective. As a Christian, a Bible-believing Christian, which I became. And as I did, I looked at the research and there was something that I needed to, to pinpoint, try to understand. And that's when we made the statement, the question we put out there at CE4 Research, are Christians being abducted by aliens? And that's what started our research of 20 years.
Oh, really? Wow. So do you think it's just Christians being abducted?
Well, what we found in our research as we started doing the investigation from that question, what we found was yes and no. Christians were being abducted and no, they weren't, along with everybody else that was not a Christian. We knew that people from all over the world were being abducted. We knew that people from different belief systems were being abducted. But I wasn't sure if Christians were being abducted. So that's why we went after that one particular question. But what we found in that particular question was yes and no. And what I mean by that is, because you're probably wondering, how can it be both? Well, what we found was Christians that were very deep into their relationship with a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, firmly grounded in Scripture, those people were not having these experiences at all. But what I did find were Christians that were saying they were Christians, but not following the Christian way, not following the teachings of Jesus, not developing a personal relationship with him, and still dabbling in things that the Bible warns us not to dabble in.
Oh, you just described me.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah. But yes, that leaves the door open, we found, to these experiences. And that was a first answer to a question that all of the researchers in the world were asking was, why does this happen to some people and not others? And what we found right there was the first answer. We actually found three answers for a possibility of why it happens to people. The first was right there, and it showed us that people dabbling in other things than what the Bible warns us about, occult, paranormal, people involved in the UFO activities, ghost activities, psychic stuff, all of that stuff right there leaves an open door for these experiences to happen in their life. Okay? What has that got to do with aliens? Is the question. Well, that leads us to more and more questions, because why would this type of, open door, we call it, dealing with these areas, why would that attract, an alien abduction? The second one we found as we went on is the first one, people were actually asking for the experience. We've actually been at conferences where we had tables set up and we have our information out. Somebody walks by and all they see is alien abduction, the word there, and they say, oh, I want to have that because I want to know what this is about. Well, we warn them, be careful what you ask for. Really careful what you ask for, because there's somebody listening. And, the second one was people unknowingly opening the door to this. In other words, they were dabbling in these areas, not knowing the danger. That's where most of the cases come from. But there was a third part that we couldn't answer. And that's when people came to us and said, I don't fit those first two. I remember having these experiences as a child, and how could that possibly fit in? Well, when we started going and looking at deeper into the investigations about their personal life, we also started looking at their family life as they were, when they were younger. What were their parents doing? What were they into? What were their belief systems? And every time we found that the open door had come from the parents, okay? And biblical scripture backs that up. Biblical scripture says that the head of the household, the spiritual head of the household, the family, is the father. And if the father's not keeping a spiritual covering over that family, then that family is susceptible to the wiles of the enemy, the demonic forces, as well as he is.
So interestingly, last time we spoke, I found it interesting because, as you know, I had an experience, but it was an experience with a military man. I don't know if you've heard of Colonel Michael Aquino.
Yes.
Somebody had told me about him, being in control of these, mind control, MK Ultra things. So as a journalist, I wanted to interview him. So I'd sent him an email, and then suddenly I had this weird experience of being yanked out of my body by my feet, and my part of me went and kind of trailed after him and then seemed to fall down a hole, a weird hole, almost like a rabbit hole, landed at the bottom, had some kind of weird conversation with him where he'd asked me what I wanted from him, and offered me this kind of weird thing, which I know now was a Merkaba, and said if I go inside it, I can go inside anybody's mind throughout history. And I said, but what about Jesus? And as soon as I said Jesus, I found myself back in my body. And he actually, and I spoke to Lorien about it. I went to Lorien, I know you know Lorien, for help over this, because for a whole week after that, he pulled me out of my body for a week. So literally, as I went to go to sleep, where your consciousness drifts off, as soon as mine was drifting off, it was going to a room with him. And it happened for a whole week. And on the last day, I think it was about 4 or 5 days, but it was a nightmare. And on the last day, there were greys there, and the greys were kind of looking in my mouth and all kinds of stuff. And I went to Lorien for help, and she said, try and pray, get control over it. And she said, I hate to tell you this, but sometimes it happens to people and it never stops. And they take the person to a place called the slots, and where they relive it over and over, and it scared the absolute life out of me. And this is what most people experience, isn't it, on abductions, that being yanked out of their body?
Yes, and that's what we try to show in the book, and the culmination of 20 years of work, that this experience is not being done by what we would call extraterrestrial biological entities, which most of the world is expecting to get disclosure on. They're hoping that, this final disclosure from the government, all the governments, is going to say that we're being visited by beings from other planets, physical beings like ourselves. Maybe not look like us, but physical beings. But these are not physical beings. In every instance of a recalled experience, just like your own, there's too much paranormal involved. There's too much that's saying, this goes against our physics. Too much is showing that this is an interdimensional type of, interdimensional type of experience. These beings don't reside on the same plane as we do. They come from another dimension. And Christians easily call, we accept that, no problem, because we know of that other dimension. In Scripture, we call that the spiritual dimension. That's where God resides. That's where the angels reside, both good and bad. And what we're seeing here is a connection to that realm. And that's why we titled the book Piercing the Cosmic Veil, because these entities, these beings that are harassing us, they have the ability to pierce that veil that we do not. They can come here momentarily, temporarily, and manifest things, crafts, so that we see them, like the ones we saw that the Navy were chasing. They can manipulate our minds in that sleep realm, which is that's the connection they have to come through. Okay, that puts us in that state that's closest to the veil. And these experiences are actually like a play. Okay, they're putting this whole scenario into our mind, but it's strictly a download of an experience. Did it really happen? No, it's not. And a lot of experiencers are not going to like me saying that, but as we've taken people back deeper into the experiences and asked them to relive them, we find out that all of the senses of recall are not recorded. And the reason they're not recorded is because it wasn't an actual experience like we have in real life. Okay? So what we see here is an entity that is able to live in a different realm from us, what Christians call spiritual, what secular people call interdimensional, but they're able to break that veil and come through and harass us, deceive us, and perpetuate this UFO delusion that we're dealing with. Now, why do I call it a UFO delusion? And what's the purpose of a UFO delusion? Because in every instance that people get involved in this phenomenon, it takes their eyes and their focus away from the one true God, the one true creator of the universe. This whole phenomenon is creating a futuristic religion of itself. The saviors that people are looking for are ET from another world that's supposed to come here and save us from all of our troubles. Wrong guy to be looking for. And that's what our research is showing. Back to what you were talking about of being able to stop the experience, and some people can't. We've come across that, okay? The only reason that they can't, and I'll tell you this right up front, what we found. If you're having trouble still stopping this experience after going through the things that we show you to be able to stop it, then you're still leaving that door open. The biggest problem we have with helping people come out of this is that they still dabble in something they shouldn't. They're still leaving that open door for these entities to come in. Because once you slam that door shut through the name and authority of Jesus Christ and focus your relationship on him, you've got them bound that they're not going to do this again. They may come in and harass you in a different guise, but they're not going to be pulling the same old scenario because you know what they are.
Does it happen to many people where they say, like they had a similar experience to me, where as soon as they try to sleep, they get yanked off? Is that happened a lot?
Very much so. And that's what shows us that this is a psychic experience. This is what we call a spiritual experience. The whole thing is, let me take it. There's a scripture in the New Testament where Paul refers to God took him up to see heaven. Okay. But he states right in there, he says, I do not know whether in my body or not. Okay. Because it was so real to him that he couldn't tell whether he was really there or only really in the spirit. I mean, it's that real. And that's why when the experiencers tell us, I know what I experienced. I know how real this is. Yes, we absolutely agree with you. We know how real this is. Sad thing is, it's so real to make you believe, but it isn't real. Okay? Remember, what we're dealing with here is a prophetic, is prophecy from the scripture from 1,000 years ago that said there would be an end time delusion. And that this delusion would be so powerful that even the very elect, if possible, could be deceived. So what we're talking about here is a deception that is beyond human comprehension. But we feel that over our research of 20 years, we've been able to uncover this delusion because we have testimonies of people that have been able to stop it and stop it in a way that Scripture talks about. We have,
but what time? Sorry, Joseph. The people, knowing how terrifying it is, the people that can't stop having. I mean, do they? What's happening to them right now? The people that can't stop it, are they? If mine went on for like 4 days to a week, and I know it. I never forget it. I mean, has it gone on longer than that for some poor bastards out there? I mean.
Some, yes, unless you actually follow through and get the protection that, that's offered through Scripture, that's offered through Jesus Christ and that authority that's in his name. Until you make that total commitment, you're still in trouble with these entities for harassment. And that's what we're trying to show. These testimonies that I post in the book, there are over 60 documented testimonies that I've never shown before, that people have been able to get their lives back through the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Through a strong personal relationship with him, they can stop this experience. I've got 150 of them on my website.
And the people that are having the experiences, what is a common experience? Are they seeing the greys? And are the greys like doing the experiments on them? What's the most common? Is that a theme that runs through it?
The most common are the greys, except we did come across scenarios where what people themselves that have the experience, they say that they encounter higher spiritual entities. That's the term that they use. And these are ones that are described in literature as the Nordics or the Pleiadians or whatever. The only thing that I can tell you, what we found with these experiences, they may seem like they're good experiences, but in the end, all they are is better at the deception than the nasty grays. Because what you're seeing there is what is called good cop, bad cop. Like on a television show, when you're arrested and you're taken into that dark room and they question you, one cop acts like he's your friend, but the other one, he's real angry and he's trying to get everything out of you. Okay? That is called good cop, bad cop. And what we're actually seeing is the same thing with these beings. Whatever it takes for them to deceive you into believing that God is not who he says he is.
Yeah, I agree. And why do you think they look like greys? That's kind of quite odd. I've tried to work that out myself, but I can't. I mean, is that a kind of covering of some kind, that little weird sort of big eyes? And is that a covering for something?
I believe it absolutely is a covering. That's not who these entities look like. I don't believe these entities are in their actual form or that form at all. I think what's happening here, you got to keep in mind that they live in a parallel, universe to us. They live in a realm that's beside us, not away from us, but right here beside us. They are aware of everything we do, everything we see, everything we look at, everything we get involved in. They've taken advantage of what we expect ET to look like. And in the beginning, it didn't start that way. But as Hollywood picked up on it, and the ideas came about, so did the change in the look of these entities. And keep in mind, too, they appear as whatever they need to appear as to convince that person and to delude that person, to get them to actually fully believe in them. Okay? Whatever it takes. whether it takes you looking at crop circles, cattle mutilation, sightings, or an abduction experience. They're going to use whatever it takes to get you to disbelieve in the one true God. And that's what we're seeing in every case.
Oh, do you mean the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh?
Absolutely. And the New Testament.
Yeah, yeah. And also the reptilians, do they come in on it? I thought that maybe the grey thing was maybe a mask reptilian lizard-like beings. After all, they had that in the Garden of Eden, didn't they? A lizard-type being.
Well, that's the interpretation from the Old Testament to language to English, was they would use a serpent, but you actually look at the deep definition of what that term is. In Hebrew, it was the shining ones. So we know that was actually a spiritual being that was there, doing that. And the same beings that were here today, they're just in a different guise. The message is the same. If you look at the cover of the book, it's the entity extending the apple out there, for humanity. That's the seduction. Okay, these entities are seducing mankind with the idea that they too can be like God. Okay, the same lie from the garden. We're going to offer you technology. We're going to offer you knowledge that you too can be like God if you accept. The same exact lie from the Garden of Eden, from scripture that's been there for thousands of years. It hasn't changed at all. Man still falls for the same lie.
Do you think that they're linked with the, because, after that experience with Aquino, I know he's linked with the military and he's the Church of Satan. Do you think there's certain humans that are in league with alien forces right now?
Well, I think they're in league with demonic forces, and they believe they're alien forces. Nick Redfern wrote a book couple years ago, Final Events. Actually, I had an interview in the book, his book Final Events, but it was interviewing, Ray Boucher, who was an Episcopalian preacher and also a state director for Montana, I believe it was, for MUFON. And these government agents came to him and wanted to share with him something that they had come across. And this was quite a few years ago, back in the early 90s, I believe it was. And they actually were sharing with Ray. They thought he would listen, being MUFON and a preacher, that for what they had to tell him and what they were telling him. And Nick covers it in the book, that they had actually understood that what they thought the government was dealing with aliens were actually demonic forces in disguise. And so I believe that the cover-up is bigger than we can imagine. If you talk about this disclosure and why is it not happening, I believe it's not happening because the government knows what we're dealing with, and they are really afraid to let this out. It's one thing to say, hey, folks, we're dealing with aliens from other worlds. Hallelujah, we're not alone. But it's a whole nother scenario to say, excuse me, folks, but we're dealing with forces beyond comprehension, evil beyond comprehension, with power beyond comprehension that we have no idea what to do about. But I'm telling you, in our book, we tell you if that's what this is, and we're pretty sure it is, we have the power to stop it. We have the most powerful weapon in the entire universe, and that's that name and authority in Jesus Christ. These entities, no matter how powerful or how technologically advanced they seem to be, that name will destroy them.
Do you think it's linked with this targeting that people are talking about targeting a lot and, bad things happening to them? And do you think it's linked in with these beings, these creatures?
I think it's all linked together. Every aspect that's outside of Scripture, everything that is paranormal, everything that is dealing in the psychic realm, everything that's dealing in the New Age metaphysical realm, those are all separate parts of the delusion. Anything that people get involved with that's outside of Scripture is going to be part of the enemy. And in some way, it's going to take them away from the one true God. The whole purpose is for our souls to be doomed. Okay? We're dealing with a cosmic war that's been going on since the beginning of time. And the prize for this cosmic war is human souls. Okay? Your soul's going to either live with God, the Creator, forever, or it's going to be doomed forever. And these entities are trying to take as many human souls as they can with them because they are doomed. They are not going to be alive forever. They're going to burn in the lake of fire. So says Scripture. Okay? But they want to be able to show God, you're not so great after all. These people didn't follow you. Okay? That's what this whole thing is about. And this is just a modern version of the warfare. This warfare has been going on for thousands of years since humanity's been here in one form or another. This is just the modern guise, the modern version of the warfare.
Yeah, it's awful what's going on. Do you think they're getting sort of, there seems to be more activity? I've noticed there's a lot of people online sort of, doing magic work and connecting with demons, and they've got hold of their sigils and they're doing that kind of work. There's a lot of that going on as well.
Absolutely. I don't think it's decreasing in any manner. I think it's absolutely increasing. I've seen articles where people write about, well, the abductions aren't happening anymore. Don't think that. I'm getting emails every week. They still come in. They're not stopping. I'm seeing an increase in where I started 20 years ago. The people that have turned away from God in society, I tell you what, it's gotten deeper and deeper and deeper into some crazy stuff. And I tell you, it's prophesied in Scripture that we are right on track to what you're seeing happening. The only
with that
is
corona, do you think the virus is part of it?
that I don't know. It could be, but I don't get too much off track from my own research. If I do, I end up becoming less of myself in the research. So I know there's a lot of things I could be looking at to try and put it all together, but I leave other people to pick up on those and we talk about it together. But I try to keep my focus on this one aspect. I chose one piece of the puzzle to try and solve, and I'm pretty sure that I've solved it at this point after 20 some years. I bring my
sorry. And why do you think that? I mean, when they get taken out of their bodies and experimented on and stuff, what do you think that the demons or whatever? What do you think they're getting out of doing that?
It's a control. It's an ability to control the person. It puts fear into those people. It lets them know that they have no control over what's happening to them, and they have to succumb to this experience. They have to succumb to what these entities are doing. And usually, and this is that good cop, bad cop I told you about. We have many cases over the years that we've looked at where people, they've gone through the horrific experiences, but at some point have given into the experiences, and the next thing you know, they're no longer having the horrific experiences, but they're being visited by the Nordics or the Pleiadians and being told that they're here for a purpose, and what they went through was getting to that purpose, that they're to be messengers to humanity. We see that a lot. There's a lot of communication between these entities and humans, but it's always a lie. They try to prophesy about things that are coming and earth changes and all of that, but nothing has ever come true with what they predicted.
But I should imagine they would be able to see ahead of time.
Yes, I'm sure they can, but they're lying about what they're saying.
Oh, I see, about good things. Have you ever heard of the term walk-ins? That's been bandied about. Walk-ins?
Oh, yes. Not as much anymore. I used to hear about that 25 years ago. That was a big thing. It was right along with the same aspect of people being contactees. But the walk-ins were a little deeper than that. The walk-in is where you weren't just in contact with these beings, but the beings actually, these spiritual entities actually took over your personality, your everything. You actually became a living human being shell for that entity. Yes, I knew a few walk-ins in my early research that I used to work with. Fascinating people.
So is that a good thing or bad thing?
No, that's about the closest thing to possession that I have ever seen. And it's not like possession you would see in, the old movie, The Exorcist. Possession can be very, very subtle. And I think that's the example the walk-ins are showing.
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it? And there's a lot of military activity linked with them as well, Do you?
I've studied that part right along with the rest of the abduction experiences. The only thing I think that's actually happening there, I really do not see a military connection. I think what we're seeing here is just another piece of the onion opening up into the deception. Okay? I think it's just making the deception deeper and deeper. I think these people are in their memories are remembering military personnel, but I think that's more of just the deception that's actually happening. Didn't really happen, but the memories are implanted to make it believe that it happened.
Oh, I see. What about, I had an experience as well of these orbs. I saw one night, 2:00 in the morning, out the window, went out to my back garden, and they were sort of up above the house, and they were absolutely amazing. They were kind of going backwards and forwards, and they disappeared like really, really fast. And they were just the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I reported it to the local, used to be a national newspaper journalist. I reported it to the local newspaper, who did a really cheesy story on me that, it was the rugby stadium. It was the lights there. They were testing the lights. Now, I rang them and said, were you testing your lights at 2 a.m.? They were like, no. And it just, I know, it was far too powerful for it to be lights. They were absolutely amazing. They were really high set in the sky, and they were just moving kind of like a conveyor belt. What do you think those orbs are? Have you come across them?
I have. And, at first I had my issues with orbs because I was only seeing them in pictures. And I have no doubt that 99% of all the pictures or videos that people show of orbs are not orbs. It's camera issues. But when you get a testimony like you just gave, and one that I actually heard from my son and his brother, I tell you, I can't deny the reality of them. Okay, from credible people that actually, when I hear the story, it's more believable than people just saying, "Hey, I took these pictures. Look what showed up." I don't think those are orbs. But when people actually can tell you an experience like you just did, I have no doubt that people are seeing them. In the instances that people are seeing them, normally it's along the same lines as people that are involved with something else already. Okay? There's an open door already there. These entities, I believe, are using the appearance of orbs to be able to seduce and distract and deceive us just as they are any other mode that they're using. Like I said,
it was interesting that I went to interview Stephen Greer, and it was the day before, it was the night before I was due to see him the next day that I saw them, which I thought was a weird coincidence. And I went down to London, met him, had a little chat with him, and he was giving a really weird little lecture, and it was in like a house in London, and there was a basement, and the lecture was held down in the basement, and he said he'd been out and communicate with these beings, and he said, now I'm going to let you hear one, and he gave out this high pitch noise, and no kidding, I felt it more or less pierce my kind of heart, and then I felt it wrap around me really tightly that I couldn't stand up and leave, and it was the most uncomfortable, horrific thing, and I went home and had the most awful nightmares that night. I really did. It was horrific. I don't know what he's playing at.
Kind of gives your source away right there.
How do you mean?
Well, I don't think if it was a message from God, that experience, that you would have that type of effect.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was really, and everyone seemed to, that's really fascinating. And then I spoke to quite a few people that had got this weird app he was selling an app that you can get for your phone where you can communicate with them and where you listen to the noise. But I mean, that noise, it wasn't a good noise.
No, and it's most likely he's tapping into a frequency that puts us in that alpha or beta state, that like a sleep state that allows us closer contact with this, this veil that these entities are able to break through and deceive us through.
Well, yeah, somebody used the app. It was on Facebook. I was talking to them through a friend. I think it was Max Spears, actually. And they said, oh, why are you slagging off the app? I got the app and I actually saw this face in front of me as I was laying in my bed. And I thought, well, yeah, you would do. I said, I didn't say it didn't work. I said, it's really, really something bad. I mean, they didn't seem to get it. They were just excited that they were getting anything,
You made a good point right there. What people seem to be, and this is not just regular people, non-Christians, but Christians alike nowadays. We see more and more of it in the Christian church. More people are looking for the experience, okay, to show that there's something else, okay, that God is real, or the paranormal is real, or the spiritual realm is real. They want an experience as evidence. But I'm telling you, and you'll hear it from Jason too, my partner, that the true evidence is through a personal relationship with the creator of the universe. That's the true evidence. That's what these testimonies that I have show. They show that not only is this UFO phenomenon not what it appears to be, but it also shows, because of how the testimonies work, and they're able to stop the experience through the name and authority of Jesus Christ and through a relationship with him, that God of the Bible is real, Jesus Christ is real, okay, that all of this is real. And we have an access to the most powerful weapon in the universe as Christians. We can stop anything that's coming at us through that personal relationship. That's what this book that we've produced shows, not just dealing with aliens, but dealing with everything in our entire life.
I agree. Oh, I'd love to read it. I'm going to get it myself. So can you buy it on Amazon? It's out there on Amazon, isn't it?
Yes, it's available on Amazon right now. We've got a website that I put up there following the book. It's called www.piercingthecosmicveil.com. Our research website is www.ce4research.com. Okay, and feel free, if you have listeners out there that are having trouble with this, with any types of these experiences, we're there to listen. Jason, he'll testify. He never expected me to pick up the phone and talk to him. He thought I would be way too busy to reach out to him personally. No, you contact me, I'll talk to you. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for 25 years. Okay, I'm here to help people. I believe this is the only hope available in the world for these people having these experiences. There's nothing out there, nothing else out there that does what this does. There's nothing out there with testimonies saying, hey, this works. This stops this experience. Nothing like the name and authority of Jesus Christ. And I've challenged researchers over the years. Show me another name that works. Show me anything. And I've gotten nothing.
No, of course. I mean, I had a weird experience after I interviewed the serial killer Kenneth Bianchi over there in London, the Hillside Strangler. And it was the same kind of things you get from the Greys. He had the ability to put images into my mind and just do remote viewing, all sorts of weird, the same as the entities. And I believe he got into his stuff, obviously, through, torturing and murdering women. It's the same thing. It was the same. It felt the same.
Yeah, it's all connected. And, one of the most amazing stories I ever read that showed that connectivity from somebody in the secular realm of research was one of the experiences that Whitley Strieber got to talk to when he was doing research with abductees, where a person they recalled actually being on a ship and also saw a dead relative that they met on the ship. Excuse me, how's that even possible? That's not something that could physically happen. That tells you right there, we're not dealing with physical beings. We're dealing with a spiritual experience, a spiritual beings.
Yeah, I often think as well, people, these beings come into these so-called serial killers, and they sort of, because I know they like to hurt people. And if you look, there's often these serial killers, there's often sort of antichrist marks, like, when they torture them, they do it where the stigmata is, and, they sort of make them pose in the sign of the cross, and, stuff like that, which shows a lot of antichrist feeling is behind it, but makes me not believe that it's just some guy who wants to rape and murder women.
Correct. They've got some kind of background that's opened those doors into that happening.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Normally they're boys, and they're only young. They're 25, these serial killers mostly. And normally they're very, very effeminate. They're effeminate. They're not manly men. They're very sort of, they've got a flimsy hold on their physical body.
And a flimsy hold on their own minds.
Yeah. And these entities, I think, come in and use it. But it just shows you the viciousness they have towards humanity if they want to torture and rip and, and just destroy us.
You asked earlier about looking at all of this. Is this something that is coming bigger and bigger? We see all of the distractions in the world right now that look to seem to be political or racial in nature in a lot of countries. I don't believe that's the root cause of what's happening here. I think actually what you're seeing here, if you look at the root cause, which is what I do as a safety professional, when I come across an accident, I can find, causal factors that helped the accident happen. But when you get to the root cause of actually what happened, that's where you find the answer. And I believe the root cause of all of this stuff we're seeing in the world right now is because it's a spiritual war, not anything else. It's all of these other things are distractions to make us not see that it's a spiritual war. But bottom line, this is all about those who believe in God and those who don't.
Mm-hmm. We're going to a break now, so thank you for joining us, Joseph. And we're going to stay with your co-author after the break, and you're going off to work, I believe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, and it's been great pleasure. We'll be back after the break, and it'll be 3 minutes.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Be evasive. But that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came and unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
I want to thank everybody for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the one place where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
All right, let's show them what we got here.
Please, Hi, Karl Marx here. I am all seriousness today, my friends. There is this show you must not listen to. The Ultimate Remedy with this guy, LB. This guy has figured me out. I hear it on Tuesday, and he is telling the truth. I mean lies. Stay away from this guy. Where's my good hairbrush? Anybody seen Mama?
Want to learn more about the Marxist agenda and other important stuff? Listen to The Ultimate Remedy with L.B. Bork, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Revolution Radio.
All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Sorry, Christine Joanna Hart back after the break. And now we're with Jason December, who is the co-author of the book. We're going to talk about his experiences and hear his story. Are you okay for sound there, Jason?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty well. Can you hear me, Christine?
Yes, I can. I'm going to bring on Jana, who comes on, and she has been a guest of mine, and she's a psychic, so that'll be quite interesting. She co-hosts with me sometimes. She did last week and the week before. She's an interesting woman because she's also had experiences herself. So I thought all the three of us will be here, and that will be interesting. But we're focused on your story, Jason. I'm just going to bring her on, so then we'll start hearing. Just make sure she's with us. John, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, excellent. Yes, we can. Lovely. Welcome to the show. And I just telling Jason all about you, and now I think we'll hear his story together, and it will be interesting. We can both question him. So go ahead, Jason, and tell me, how you got into the whole thing.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Okay. We can. Okay. Yes.
So my, just to kind of, as a precursor to my testimony, I was listening to you and Joe speak. Prior to my first encounter, I had gone through a second divorce, had two young children. My wife moved about 8 hours away. We lost everything. It was pretty tough. It was a time in my life where I was probably at my lowest. I came from making six figures, had a nice home, had two young children, and we lost everything. The divorce was pretty tough. I got left alone, started using drugs, was drinking heavily, was isolated. And this had gone on for about a year and a half. I was really contemplating suicide at the time from just the despair, losing the children and what have you. And at that time, I tried to stop using, and I did. And I started reading my Bible. I started listening to different pastors on the radio here in Southern California. And I felt I was clean for a while, and I felt like I was really making I needed some hope in my life because I was really starting over again. And just before I felt like I was kind of making a connection and I was really going to pull myself out of this, a year and a half after the divorce, I went to work on a Sunday I worked in lending, so did mortgage lending at the time, and I was in my office on like the 5th floor, and I was looking over Newport Beach, and I could see in the distance, about 10, 15 miles away, this huge light in the sky. It was relatively light that day, and I had planned after work to pick up a friend of mine who worked in Newport Beach right off maybe a mile or two from the beach. So I kept looking at this through the window of my office thinking, what was this? What is this? I had no idea what it was. Ended up getting to her place about 8 o'clock. She got out of work at 8 o'clock, and this light was just hovering over the sky, over the hospital there. And it would get super bright, and then it would condense. And at some points it would condense, and it would poof into a ball of smoke, and I would think that it was gone. I didn't know what it was, and then it would reappear to the left, and it would do the same thing, and it would reappear to the light. Nevertheless, she got out of work at 8 o'clock, came out, was excited, wanted to show her. One of the security officers that was in the area was watching this with me. She had actually gone home to get a telescope or some type of a camera to take pictures of it. Well, of course, she came out, and it was gone. It had disappeared, and I was pretty upset because I wanted her to see it. I was pretty excited, didn't know what it was. So we get in my truck, and she was driving at the time, and we headed out of the parking lot, and it was just starting to get dark, and I headed up north on Newport Boulevard, kind of just figuring, hey, there's something supernatural. I don't know what that was. We couldn't really figure it out. And at the time we were discussing it, it must have been 15, maybe 10 minutes after we left the parking lot. She says, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And I looked up I was in the passenger seat. I looked up in the air, and I saw a craft that was square. It was coming in from the sky, and it was so huge. It must have been the size of a small mall, it seemed. It was, I could see the lights. I could see the metal. I could see the structure of it clearly. So I was very excited. I told her to pull off of this road, which she did, and we ended up going over an embankment into a parking lot. We jumped out of the car, and this thing was silent. There was no sound whatsoever at all, and I was absolutely mesmerized. I couldn't really function except just looking at this thing, maybe 75 feet, maybe 100 feet in the air, just hovering, coming directly over us. And I was paralyzed. I really was. I didn't know what to think. And I started kind of yelling at it. I had to put my hands up in the air as it came over us. And when I yelled at it, I said, "What are you?" It stopped just past me, and it basically went in reverse, which alarmed me greatly. And at that time, I thought, whatever this thing is this thing going to beam me up? Is this thing heard me? It heard me cry out to it. And the moment it started to back up, two more of these things, same size, came out from the northeast towards us. And I jumped in. I said, we freaked out. We jumped in the truck. What do I go? What do we do? What do we do? We pulled the car around off the freeway back onto PCH, which is Pacific Coast Highway in Newport Beach, and we started traveling north. Her house was in Westminster, California, so we were going to take this up about, let's say, 10 or 11 miles. As we drove this road, and as the ocean was on my left and the landmass was on my right, ships appeared everywhere. It was absolutely incredible. I could see bright lights the size of little suns as far as the eye could see, and they were placed over buildings. I could maybe see 10, 15 miles to my right over the landmass, and these light objects were everywhere. There must have been 20 or 30 of them. Over our heads came discs spinning silently, spinning, blue lights spinning reverse at the bottom of them. They were in formation. I felt like it was an alien invasion. I could only describe it as an armada, as other ships were. It was different types of ships all together flying with us and around us. As we got about 2 or 3 miles in, I had enough wherewithal to call my uncle. I called the lady who was renting me my room out. And I was just trying to call people, let them know to come out of their home, because I thought this was the end of the world, basically. I got 2 people on the phone that night. I told them to come out of their homes because I could see that these lights were above their homes respectively. So I was sure that they would be able to witness what we were seeing. None of the two people I spoke to could not see anything that I was seeing. So I got off the phone with them in a frantic, and I heard the driver, the girl who was with me, say, "Oh, effing God," basically, and looked to her left, and I could see hovering above the oil rigs over the ocean, vertical cylinders that were absolutely enormous. 3 of them, they were over the oil rigs, and they were shining like a neon light. They were absolutely enormous. So as this is all happening, we're driving, and there was no sound ever. It was the most bizarre thing. There was no sound whatsoever at all. And we ended up getting to the street where we needed to go inland at. And I told her, I said, let's, these things, we have to pull over. We have to show people what's going on. So we pulled over to a couple gas stations, and I could see that no one was witnessing what we were seeing. But so I would go up to people very cautiously, and I didn't want to scare anybody, but I wanted to make sure that we weren't together losing our minds. I needed some validation at this point, and I would go up to some strangers and I would say, "Hey, have you happened to see these lights?" And I would point them up in the direction, and at that point they would say, the people would look up and they would witness and they would see, and I would go to the next person and we would stop at a little mini mart. We did that about twice to make sure that other people were witnessing this, and they were once we took them out of their sleep, because it was almost as if we were in this thing together, but everyone else was basically, it was like they were walking zombies, not being able to experience what was happening. It was almost as if we were in some type of a bubble, some type of a dimensional shift or something like that. I don't know. One thing that did happen when we got to the point right where her house was, there was a gas station and a burger joint that you could drive through, an In-N-Out burger joint. And as we pulled up to this gas station, I saw this man standing and looking up at these objects, these bright light objects that were everywhere, floating all over the skies. And he was looking at them. So I was like, oh my God, finally somebody. So we pulled over. I went up to the guy. I stood right next to him and I said, I just drove 12 miles from Newport Beach to Westminster here. I've seen multiple craft. What's going on? What's happening? And he very calmly said, they're here all the time. And they don't come from other planets. They come from other dimensions, but they're here all the time. And it was very, very strange. It was a surreal experience. At that very moment, I saw a police officer in line at the burger joint, and I needed some answers. So I cautiously ran across the street, and this police officer was in line to get his burger. And I went up to his passenger window calmly. He had it down about halfway. And then, as I was approaching him, one of these hovering sun-type lights was coming towards him. So if he would have looked to his left out the window, he would have seen it. So I went up to him and I said, hey, listen, my name is Jason December. This is my friend. I'm not on drugs. We just we came from Newport Beach. We've witnessed these craft. They're all over the place. And I started letting him know, I work in financing. I have children and this and that. I have a home over here. And he said, he notioned for me to come close to the window. And I went down and he said, quiet your voice. And I said, okay. And I said, have you had any calls like this? I go, can you please turn to your left and roll down your window? I'll back up a little bit, but I need you to see what we're talking about. And he wouldn't look out of his window. And I said to him, what's going on? I need to know what's happening. Have you had any calls? He said, well, we've had a couple of calls about something like this, but you need to calm down right now. And I said, okay, well, I'm a little bit out of my mind because I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and I need some help here. I'm looking for some help. You'd think a police officer could give you some type of direction when you've got these things flying around everywhere. Well, he looked at me and he would not look outside his window. He wouldn't turn his head, and he called us both over closer to the window and he said, I need you guys to stop talking about this. I need you to turn around, get in your car, and I need you to go home. I don't want to have to. I do not want to have somebody come out here and take you. And I looked at him and I said, you've got to be kidding me right now. I said, I'm asking you for help and you're telling me. And he got a little angry and he would not look outside his window. And he said, I need you to go home now. I'm not going to ask you again. We proceeded to go back to her place. I woke up in the morning, got to the office about 6:30, and I had one hell of a day. I felt like I was the only man on earth. I felt like I didn't feel like there was any reason for anything. I was angry with God because I was so close to him helping me, and now all these things were flying around me, and I don't know what in God's name reality was even about, but it wasn't, God was the furthest thing from my mind. It was something other and maybe even bigger. That was my thought process. That day after work, the second day, I had an inclination, and I was a little bit apprehensive that these things might be after me again. And I thought, when I pull out of this parking lot at 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, I pray to God that they're not there. Well, when I came out of the parking lot that night, the minute my car came out of the lower level, there was a light, not a star, not a plane, nothing. It was a light relatively close to me, and it followed me. It followed me for months. It would not leave me, and I proceeded to go through hell the next 3 years. I met a woman who believed my story. I was suicidal at that point, and I think God put her in my life, and she believed my story. We moved in together, and unfortunately, I had a fascination with these things, and I continued to pursue them every evening, filming them, taking pictures of them, and they courted me. It went from me filming them on my camera to me seeing beings on the ground. I learned over time, because I had done this every night. I would spend hours outside in the patio taking these cell phone videos and pictures, and I just eventually started seeing things on the ground. Every time a ship would appear, helicopters would always accompany the ships that I would see, and I started seeing beings in my videos. And my girlfriend did not want to witness it. She thought I was, she did not want me to pursue it any longer. But it was almost as if I was addicted to the fear, even though it was the scariest thing ever in my life that I ever experienced. And as things started, you guys talked about orbs earlier. I started searching the computer and YouTube, going down all the rabbit holes. I was looking for solutions. God was the furthest thing from my mind. I just needed answers because something was going on and I needed to know. So I was going down every rabbit hole you could possibly go down. I witnessed orbs outside. The first time they appeared, I was in bad shape. I was upset about the kids, and I was outside, and I was basically asked them to show themselves to me. And when I did that, these orbs appeared right in front of me and floated in a silence and floated in front of me. I was witnessing orbs in the home. We were having my computer get wiped out on a weekly basis. I could not find a job. I would send out information to people for a job, for contacts that I had known for years, and they would never return my call. I would talk to someone for an interview, and they would never return my call again. I was the most bizarre thing. This proceeded to go on for about a little over 2 years, until it just seemed to progress and manifest itself into more intense sightings, more intense visualization of the beings. I was looking at the ISS web, or the ISS cam on my phone. I would be able to pick up the radio signal from Houston to the Russian and American cosmonauts every single time I hit the ISS phone. I have the radio contact recorded on my old computer. It was almost as if I was a walking beacon for this craziness that I couldn't understand. We had people coming in our lives at strange places and saying things about the secret space force, and if I've witnessed reptilians, if I know about these things. And it was almost as if I called it high strangeness, because it just kept going and going and going. And as scary and as fearful as it was, I just continued to pursue it until one night we came home. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly.
One night my girlfriend and I came home from somewhere, and she was tired. It was about 9:30 in the evening, and she ended up laying on the couch. I think I had 2 glasses of wine that evening, and when we had come home, I had seen a ship, but I didn't say anything to her because I didn't want to. she was not having it, and I didn't want to. It was starting to affect our relationship. So she fell asleep. I went out into the carport area where we were living, and I started filming this ship that I could see really far in the distance. It was very far away, but it was big. And I could see little red lights coming in and out of this ship, and it was from a distance, and it was far. And I was watching it, filming it, and I was out there for about 45 minutes. All of a sudden, these lights that were coming in and out of the ship started to leave the ship, but start to come my way a lot closer. This continued on for about 10 to 15 minutes until one of the lights made it as close, maybe one or two of those red lights, made it as close to hovering above the carport, about to come over my head. As I saw that light, I had an overwhelming amount of fear, knowing that I had to get out of here. I didn't know why, but I had to run. And that's the last thing that I remember. It was about 10 o'clock when I think that had happened, maybe 10:15 in the evening. And the next thing I remember is my girlfriend pounding on the door in my truck. I was sitting in the driver's seat with the window up, and I just woke up to pounding. And the doors were locked, the window was up, and she was very, very frightened. She opened up the door. I fell out of the car. I was beat up. I felt like I had been beat up by about 7 to 8 men. I couldn't walk. She had to carry me into the home. It was 3:30 when she found me, and I woke up in the morning, and I got out of the bed and I fell down. I couldn't walk. I crawled into the bathroom, and I was sitting there on the potty, and I was wearing nothing but my underwear, and I looked down and I could see that my hair had been cut on the inside of my legs. I had a puncture wound in my left heel on the inside of my leg. I felt bruises and bumps and scrapes all over my body. And on my left thigh, I had what appeared to be a triangle pattern, 3 dots. And I knew, because of my dabbling and trying to figure out what was happening to me, that this was possible abduction type scenario. So I went out in the patio in the morning and I pulled up abduction pictures, and as I went through them, they all matched everything that I had, and I felt absolute. That's when I really got into a situation where I knew I was dealing with something that it was violating me physically, or so I thought. And we ended up contacting a therapist, hypnotherapist by the name of Yvonne Smith, who I guess is well renowned, but I needed answers. We contacted her in LA. She told me that she would meet my girlfriend and I in Newport Beach to do an interview. She wanted to charge me, but I needed to talk to somebody. So we ended up there. We paid her the money. She videotaped me. She recorded me. They offered to look for implants and things of that nature, and it was just too much. We went home and we spoke about it. She sent me the paperwork, and she said, if you ever do this hypnotherapy, you really want to think about it, because it could possibly change your life and the people that you know, your children, your in-laws, and really everybody once this happens, because some people don't know how to cope with it. And so we discussed it in detail, and we decided that it wasn't something she wanted me to do, because if I would have known what had happened that night, I don't know how if I would have dealt with that, to be quite honest with you guys. So at that point, it was getting to a situation where everything was manifesting itself quicker. The sleep paralysis, the ships, the beings that I was seeing, and when I mean beings, I mean everything from reptilians to greys to other beings that looked like octopuses, that looked like insectoids, that looked like, and they all seemed to have families. They all seemed to have young children. So you could tell that they were together, and that there was some type of a dimension or realm that was around me that was parallel with mine. And for some reason, I was unfortunately able to witness this on a constant basis. And it wasn't fascinating anymore. It was absolutely horrifying. And it was affecting my sanity and my relationship with my soon-to-be wife. So at that point, shortly after that, and some many, many more episodes that I really don't want to get into right now. I don't take too much of the time, but just want to get the bullet points across. She had to go visit her sister in Arizona one night, and she left, and it was going to be a 2-night stay. I was alone in the apartment. It was shortly after the abduction type situation, and it was about 12:30 at night, and I basically looked at our sliding glass window in our living room where we had these vertical blinds, and there were 3 or 4 sets of lights, 3 feet tall, I would say, whatever the objects, whatever they were outside of the window. And I absolutely lost my mind. I basically melted into the couch and started crying and screaming as loud as I possibly could. And I'm a very loud person. There's no way in God's green earth that nobody had heard me during this situation. Well, I knew that if I'd gone out the front door, I'd have to run into them, and I didn't want to do that. So my heart was racing so fast, and I was in so much terror that I knew I was going to die. I don't know how to explain it. I knew my heart was going to stop, and at the last moment where I felt like I was really going to leave this earth, I cried. I just said, Jesus, Jesus. And I looked to my left, and there was an apparition, or what you would call, I guess, in my kitchen, standing there was Jesus. And he was, I can only describe it as a hologram. He wasn't full size, but he was actually levitating, maybe floating. He was facing at 2 entities which looked like Bitmojis. That's the only way I can describe them. And they were crouched down below him in fear, as if he was posing a threat to them. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I didn't know if this was really happening. So I took my hands and I wiped my eyes to try to, I don't know what I was thinking. And I looked back to see if the eyes were still at the window, and they were gone. When I looked back again, he was still there. And I looked up at the sky, and at that moment, or I looked up at the ceiling in my apartment, and at that moment, everything stopped. I can't explain to you guys what I mean by everything stopped, but the fear, the terror that I was in was gone. The entities were gone inside the house. The entities were gone outside. Everything was gone. I got on my knees and I started praying. I started crying out to Jesus, who I had known as a young child. I was probably 9 or 10. I asked him to be my Lord and Savior. My mother was heavily into the church, but I didn't take it seriously. I was a young child. I didn't know the ramifications or implications of it. However, I did feel when I asked him to come in my life at that time, I really believed it. Well, that next morning, I turned on my computer and I started looking around again, but I was typing in more things towards, I would say, Jesus and UFOs and things like that. Well, I ended up coming across Joe Jordan's testimony. I think it was from 1997 from a UFO conference, and he went through his entire testimony, which I think you guys may be aware of, and I broke down, and I was it was just like I just felt this relief in my life. My girlfriend came home. I told her what had happened. We went to the website, CE4 Research. I printed out the 8 Hours to Freedom. She taped them all over the apartment and for the bathroom, the kitchen, the bedroom, and we looked at them together on a daily basis, and we just when Joe brought up those people one after the other, I think there were 400 that they had these similar experiences and that were able to end it by crying out in the name of Jesus Christ. So nevertheless, that month I started attending church. I was still very foggy. I felt like I had been, I think it was about a 2.5 to 3 year experience. This whole thing that I call it a courting event, because it started off with a visitation, and over the 2 years, it just progressed into me being able to witness and see more. It was almost a seduction of some kind. Nevertheless, I ended up moving out of that place, which I think was, I used to think I was being targeted also, because there was just so much high strangeness there in that apartment complex. There was a couple murders when we had lived there. There were experiences that had happened that were just otherworldly, and we just had to leave. So I started I joined a church. I got asked to play guitar. I had been in rock bands my whole life. So I started to just dive into church and started serving the Lord. And I was freed. And a couple of years went by, and I just, over the course of 2-3 years, my mind started to clear. I started understanding the Word of God. I started to understand the spiritual realm and its ramifications, and how the Word of God is infallible, and it's really the history book that we all need to be reading, because any questions that we have, everything can be found in that book. I'll tell you one thing. When I went to find help at MUFON, when I went to find help with the American UFO places, and I went to this UFO group or MUFON group in Orange County during the really hard times of it, everybody I searched for, they all wanted to have their own opinion about things, and everybody wanted to sell me something, but nobody wanted to give me help. And I can tell you guys right now that the only thing that took these experiences away was my relationship, my personal relationship with Jesus Christ, really not even a church, just the understanding of who he was and how he came in my life and how these things were able to be removed. So I always wanted to meet Joe to just thank him, because I feel like God used him and put him in my life to help me. He was one of the main components to help us be delivered from this torment. And I couldn't get a hold of him for years. And so, I don't know, in April of this year, 2020, I was here and I was watching. I decided to pull his name up, and he was doing an interview with Josh Peck, and it was fairly recent. And at the end of the interview, there was some contact information. So I gave it a shot, and I ended up sending him a quick email, a condensed version of my testimony, and within 30 minutes, I got a call. We ended up speaking on the phone for 2 hours together, and he said, "You know what? Don't think I'm going to be coming back to the States, and I would like to know if you'd like to be a partner with me. I'm finishing up a book, and I could use some information. I'd like you to partner with me on the book. I'd like to be a representative. Would you be interested in giving back your testimony and helping people get relief from these experiences?" And I said yes, because I feel like I lived a lot of my life in sin and denial in the world and what the world had to offer. And I can tell you by firsthand experience that there's no greater joy than having peace in your life, and freedom through Jesus Christ. And so here I am today. We met in April. We talk on a weekly basis. I never thought in a million years that this would happen. I didn't ask for it. I didn't really want it. I asked Joe, hey, maybe you should pray about this. We really don't know each other. And he said, it's already been given to me. This is the way it's going to go. So nevertheless, I said yes. And my job is to speak with you. This is my first interview, Christine. So I thank you for having me on here. A little nervous, I'm not going to lie. So I've kind of rambled on a bit. I'm sure you guys have questions.
Don't worry about
it. Over to you, Jana, because I did the first part, so Jana will take over. Go ahead, Jana.
Got it.
Well, you don't need to be nervous. You explained the situation, your experience, which sounded extremely intense, very well. It sounds exhausting, to say the least. It sounds like a Nicolas Cage film, to be quite honest. I can just imagine Nicolas Cage sort of going through all these experiences. So, I have to ask, previous to when all this started, was there anything happening in your life that was strange, abnormal, or terrestrial?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, it might be my accent. I'm from the north of England. When you started, during when you started after your divorce and everything, and the high strangers started.
Yes.
And, years before that, did you have any strange experiences, anything paranormal or ET?
I did. In fact, after talking to Joe, I kind of was able to go back and take a look at my life. And when she left me the second time, I actually married the same woman twice, and I was a knucklehead, but I did it. And she ended up leaving again with the kids, and I was in an apartment, and I had a neighbor upstairs that would come down frequently and hang out with me, and he would have some drinks, play his video games, and he would kind of be there for some support because I was trying to find out what I was going to do next. Nevertheless, I was doing a lot of recording in my room, and I spent one night in there, locked the door. I was doing some recording for a few hours, woke up in the morning, and I came out, and this guy was about 6'8", not 6'8", maybe about 6'4", 6'5", probably 280, big boy, and very powerful man. And when I came out of the room in the morning, he was on my couch, basically crying, as if and he looked like he'd been up all night. And he said, he said, "Jason, I never have heard anything like that in my life." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "It sounded like you went in the room last night, you're recording, and I was out here, and you had locked the door, and I had heard these noises in your room, and it sounded like people were being thrown against the wall." He said, it sounded like there were 10 guys in there, and it went on for like 35, 40 minutes. He goes, "I wanted to call the cops, but I didn't want to call the cops because there was alcohol and there was drug paraphernalia in the apartment, and I didn't know what to do. I was pinned, and I thought you were dead, and I didn't know if you were going to come out of the room. I had completely forgotten about that. I hadn't even remembered. This was before any of this had started. So in retrospect, I feel like, and during that time, I was heavily looking to numb myself, because the loss of those children it was too much for me to bear, and I was unfortunately feeding myself full of drugs as much as I could get. And in retrospect, I really believe that the drugs, the unforgiveness at my ex, the anger, the isolation, the despair, and then looking back at all of it, I really feel like I was targeted by these entities, and I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's something that I really look back on, and I'll never forget, because to see a man, be that scared and to hear that, and I don't remember anything. I don't remember any of that happening in that room. I just woke up and I felt really hungover, but I don't remember that happening.
Yeah, no noises in your room. Well, that's really strange you should say that, because that's kind of happened to me twice, but in two different houses that I've lived in at different times. I've had neighbours saying that there was so much noise coming out of my house, they were about to phone the police, and I wasn't even in the house at the time. Something like that has happened to me, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, this all sounds really strange, and no doubt you're looking for a lot of answers to a lot of questions. Do you feel like
I was?
I know you. Yeah, I know you found solace in your belief and your faith in Jesus, but apart from that, has anybody else given you any answers? Have you met any other people that have had similar experiences that you can relate to?
Oh, yes. I spoke with, I think, Christine, you spoke about Lorian. You had a conversation with her.
Lorian Fenton, yes.
Yeah, I was able to have a conversation with her a couple of days ago, and it was very refreshing. She's a wonderful lady. It was the first time I'd spoken to her, and we had a great conversation. And I kind of went through not what in depth of what I've spoken to you guys about, but the bullet points that I spoke to her. We both felt like there was a targeting there, maybe even an MK Ultra. I don't know if there's a military connection between what I experienced and what happened to me, but I can tell you guys this: when I saw those ships that night, human beings knew those ships, knew what had happened to me, and it all started then. So does that make sense? So when I look back now, the high strangeness and everything started. It was almost as if I had this experience, witnessed these ships, and now I was under some type of I was a guinea pig, or like some kind of an experiment was going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you felt like you were a subject of an experiment.
I do.
Do you still feel like?
No, I don't feel like that whatsoever at all. In fact, like I said, to be quite honest with you guys, when I truly, Joe talks about asking for these experiences, and I was fascinated with UFOs and with the alien, the worldview of aliens being cool and being kind of a popular thing. I was really involved with that as a young child. I was fascinated with it. I had a sleep paralysis experience when I was 12. But that was it. It was one time. I had them later during the years of this situation happening. But it's just gone. It's eliminated. And one of the biggest issues for me was when I was going through this and I was looking for answers. Everyone had a viewpoint, right? It was the Nephilim. It was the disembodied, souls of Nephilim. There's a hybrid program going on. They're taking my children. Like, there was just so many rabbit holes, from Planet X to the Secret Space Force to, and you know what? Those rabbit holes got me nowhere, no solution whatsoever at all. In retrospect, I just remember listening to other people. When I was going through this, my girlfriend, Katie, at the time, we would listen to these some of these radio shows that we would find, and found a couple of men that were going through these things, and they were in tears, and they couldn't tell their wives, they didn't want to tell anybody, and they didn't tell their, God forbid, their employers find out, or anybody else in their life. And this is just something you can't talk to a lot of people about. So my biggest thing was, I'm not the only man on the planet that's going through these experiences and feeling this vulnerable, this loneliness, this isolation. Like it could really drive you to insanity or into suicide. And I just, being a part of something where, hey, this worked for me. It worked for hundreds and hundreds of people that you can read about in the book that we have. You can see that it's really not rocket science. And I feel like, and Lorian made said something that I may run into some pushback in regards to this, because a lot of people, I guess, are in this realm for the money or whatever it is. Well, I'm not in it for the money. I don't want anything. I didn't ask to be on Joe's book. I didn't ask to be on this interview show. I just want people to know that if they're having any type of paranormal experiences, that you may want to call out by the authority of Jesus Christ for them to stop. And I believe in my heart and through my experience, not only were all of those experiences that nightmare able to stop, but if I can free somebody else and if I could show them that there's a way out, and that way is through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and focusing on him and his promises and his principles and staying in the Word of God, that you can find freedom. And that's basically what's happened to me. I'm not going to lie, the rabbit holes, those years I was going down, it was just never ending. It was just pounding my head against a brick wall. I couldn't find any help. And it was, the poor woman who's now my wife, she really went through it as well. And it was horrifying. It was really horrifying. And it was draining. I really, to be honest with you guys, even when it was gone and the change had happened, it took about 1.5 to 2 years for my mind to clear. I still get really jumpy. I feel like I have PTSD. I don't want to admit that, but
PTSD, Jason, from what you've described. You've been through a hell of a lot. So, I'm glad that you've got something in your life that works for you, and it gives you a lot of strength. But I have to ask the question, a lot of people who go through these experiences, it's meant to be that it's a generational thing. So family members in the past have been through similar experiences. Do you suspect that's happened in your family?
That's an interesting question. So in retrospect, you go through these things, and you after, when you get out of it, you look back, you can start seeing it from another view, right? You're not in it, so you're outside and you're actually looking at what happened with a clear mind. But that's an interesting question, because I've told a couple family members about this, and they've been leery about it, and almost I can't explain it. They don't want. My grandmother, who's 91, we've had some good conversations about it. She seems to be open to it, but when I brought it up to an uncle and an aunt, it seems as if they didn't say anything to me, but I feel like there may be an underlying silence of something that they may know that I don't know. So, and it's just an instinct that I have. So it's a great question. I don't know for a fact, but I feel like there may have been, or you know what I mean. So
I do, and obviously not everybody's comfortable talking about this kind of thing or is open to it. So
right.
We feel scared are going to be either hostile or they're just shut down completely. But I thought it was worth asking you that question, because since this has had such an impact on your life and been such a strong experience, I would be curious to find out if it happened to anybody else. So what about your wife? How does she view things? Is she accepting of everything? I know she's experienced some things along with you, but that must be really important to you, because you said that she's stuck with you, she's accepts you for who you are, kind of thing. Well, what's her take?
When it's a great question. I feel like the Lord. I feel like she's an angel. I feel like she was, because she was put into my life, a few months after the first encounter, the big sighting. And I took her aside and I told her, I said, you need to sit down. There wasn't, when I met her, it wasn't anything sexual. There was no codependency issues, because I was not in a position to have a relationship. I didn't want a relationship. Neither did she. She had been out of a marriage herself. So we did a lot of talking. But I hadn't brought that up. I did end up sitting her down and went into the gruesome detail of that night, and she believed me. And the unfortunate thing is, when we ended up moving in together in Fullerton, California, is when all those experiences really started to get evil and fearful and ugly. And I felt like they were really pushing us apart, and I think they wanted to get me alone. There was a night where she was almost, I would film every night. I would film every night and look at these pictures. I was obsessed with these beings and with these ships. And there was a night she had come home from work, and a man that she couldn't see her face tried to run at her at full speed in an alleyway and tried to get in her car. And I kind of felt like that night, I felt some fear, and I knew something was wrong. There were things like that had happened, and there were situations where she was seeing the stuff, but she wouldn't want to admit it. She wanted to be with me because she could see I was going through it, and she had a couple sightings with me, and she could see the beings, and she didn't want to. It was just causing. She was very, very fearful, but she hung in there, and she hung in there until the end. And I don't know how this happened, but to be, after 2 failed marriages, you guys, and going through something like this, and then. She wasn't a big believer on the Jesus thing, right? When I first went back to church, and I was kind of, immediately just looking for answers through God and wanted to hear what the church had to offer. She didn't come the first few times, and she started to afterwards, and she had the same experience. She had an experience with Christ. She went to a Lutheran school as a child. She had been, exposed to Christianity, but she, like me, went away throughout her adulthood. Well, she finally came back with me to church, and it's almost as if we were learning about the experience, why the experience had happened, what the experience was together, how God and how His Son was able to really give us relief, and it really gave us the ability to learn about the Scriptures and the Gospel together. And it's really done a number for our marriage, because I feel like not only is she my best friend, but I have like a marriage that is, people look at us and they don't understand that there's no tension. There's never any tension, if you know what I mean. It's always even. We're always evenly yoked, and I think that, in retrospect, that the Lord had a lot to do with that, because without Him putting her in my life at that time, after I had that first sighting, I was under so much depression that I was really contemplating suicide, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just needed to leave and get away and be alone, and I was okay with that. I felt like I just wanted to drive into a mountain and never come back, and I think that if I would have gone in that direction, it would have ended up a lot different.
Oh, interesting. Your story reminds me of John Edmonds' experiences on the Stardust Ranch. I'm sure you've heard about him.
I have.
Yeah. It sounds similar, the intensity of it, and with him having a partner as well, a wife, who was still, I think she worked for the FBI or something.
Wow.
I think actually having physical encounters with beings and fights and conflict and all kinds of stuff going on. There are other people in the world who, have had such intensity. How do you see your life forward now?
It's funny. I feel like, when you go through something like that, you kind of see the world differently. The things that used to matter don't matter anymore. Like my pride, it just removed my pride. It removed my fight. I always, I had to make I had to make a certain amount of money. I had to be able to have certain things. I had to provide in a certain way. I was of the world. I had grown up and gone really into I think that there's this. I really think that there is the spiritual realm that is in parallel in a dimension of some sorts that's equally with us all the time. And I think that if you're focused on things of the world, I think that these entities control the world to a certain degree, and I think they control the rulers of our world. And if you look around in the world today, I think you guys can understand what I'm talking about. And when I get up every morning now, I put on the full armor of God, and I thank him for giving me freedom. I thank him every day for what he's done for me and my wife, and for giving us the freedom to just be good people and to help people and to serve. I feel like I just want to serve people and help people as much as I can. One of the passages in the gospel, one that stuck with me, which is in Ephesians. It's Ephesians 6:10 through 13, and it's probably the most powerful message that I would want to tell people that are out there that are having any of these experiences. And it comes straight from the mouth of God. And it says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in an evil day, and have done all to stand." So when you read something like that and you have those experiences, it's almost like having those experiences was able to open up the Bible and make the Bible a living and breathing thing, something I could understand, and I could relate it to my reality. And the reality is that we're focused on worldly things, and the reality is that we don't wrestle with flesh and blood.
Interesting. Do you feel like you've been tested?
Excuse me?
Do you feel like you've been tested?
Oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I think I was allowed to go through that, and to be quite honest with you, ladies, I feel like if that experience didn't happen, I don't think I would have ever come back to Christ. I think that he knew. I think we're all made differently. I think we're all created. I know that we're all created differently, because we all are different, and we're very unique. And I think that we all need to go through certain things in life. And unfortunately, this was one of the things that I had to go through, and God knew that, so he allowed these things to happen to me. I wouldn't want these experiences on my worst enemy to ever happen, you guys. I don't want these things to ever happen to anybody. It's absolutely terrifying. It's exhausting. It's insanity. It's really purely insanity, and it's very systematic how these things happen. And I really believe that we are watched and monitored at all times. I think we need to be very careful of how we treat others and how we represent ourselves. And I think we need to really go back to loving each other instead of all of our opinions about things. I think we just need to really start listening to each other, and we need to start loving and helping each other.
I think that's very wise advice in the current day and age. Oh, it's a fascinating story. I think what is sticking in my mind is what you said about the police officer sat in the car. And it
bothered me. It really bothered me. Yeah, it really bothered me, because that really gave validity to the experience, but it also gave me a thought that, wow. I mean, it's very clear to me now that he knew what was going on, and to what extent he knew, I don't know that. I can't tell you that, but I'll tell you with all 100% assurity, and I have a witness to prove it, who was with me, that he would not turn his head, and he did not want us to talk about that, and he wanted us to shut our mouths, and he wanted us to go home and be inside four walls and to not say anything else about it.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
Sounds like something had already been going on, and people had already been talking, and there was already fear kind of floating about.
Yeah.
But I know that Kerry Cassidy on Project Camelot has talked about there being a huge UFO base under the sea off the coast of California, Malibu. I don't know if where you were was near Malibu, but do you think there could be anything in that?
I do. I mean, I live in Huntington Beach, California, and if you go onto their city website, or you could have a few years ago, they have a UFO map, for God's sakes. I viewed it a couple times, and people would say that, there's, if you go on the city website, you can see a map, and it shows where they fly and this and that. And I had seen it. This was years ago. But I think that, and like you said, I think that there's a presence of these entities, and I think that may also be territorial, regional. I think that maybe different types of these entities are present in certain areas, and that's about all I can say. But I do think that there's a high, I think from Catalina Island, which is off the coast about 29 miles from where we are.
Even I've heard that, and I live in, as you know, north of England, and I've heard Catalina is like a UFO hotspot. So
yeah, so I'm 29 miles east of that island. I mean, if I go outside right now and I walk down to the edge of the road, I can see Catalina. So yeah, I think there is something to be said about that.
Fascinating. You know. So have you got any plans to write a book on your own, or?
You guys, no, I'm going to be honest with you. I think you guys are familiar with Joe. I really feel like I right now my loyalty to him and our ministry, which is CE4 Research. There's a lot of good information there. There's some testimonies there, but I think this book is something that I wish I had during that time, because if I had this resource, it would have absolutely helped me tremendously, and who knows, it may have been able to really cut this thing off a lot earlier than how it got drug out to be. So
okay, well, Jason, we're coming to the end of the show, so Jason December, thank you very much for coming on the show and telling us about your fascinating experience. I mean, I've never heard anything quite like it. I think you're very brave, and I think you're very strong, and I think your strength, your experience. So, where can we get your book? Or the book?
Well, it's on Amazon. I think it's on some other. I think you really can get it. You should be able to get it anywhere at this point. But I know it just got released. It's on Amazon. It's called "Piercing the Cosmic Veil." Right. And then there's some other information in there as well, where you can contact us, Joe or myself, and we can answer questions and listen to people and things of that nature. But I wanted to thank you ladies for having me on and being so kind and gentle with me on my first interview, because I've done this a few times in a small group, and maybe a handful of people have heard my testimony, but I was a little apprehensive to do this, but you guys have made it really easy for me.
Well, that's not a problem. It's been great having you on. And so the book is available on Amazon, and it's Piercing the Veil. Piercing the Cosmic Veil? Yep. Piercing the Cosmic Veil. And would you say it is non-Christian friendly? And by that, I mean not people who are against Christians, but people who might not necessarily be Christians. Do you think it's a book to read? It's really not a book about Christianity. It's really not a book about religion. It's a book about testimonies. It's the evidence, right? It's the evidence that Joe's put together over the course of 20 to 30 years. It's my testimony. It's there's some things in there in relation to what we think can help stop this, and that is in there. But as you see the cover and you see the guts of it, you'll see that there's some fascinating stories that even a non-believer would be interested in, and I think it's really a great resource, if anything, to really help a lot of people to find freedom. So. Well, that's perfect. That's really good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for our listeners in tonight. Thank you, guys. God bless. Thanks, guys. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain, as free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for